Hi there Waltineers, I'm Jack and this is DSNY Newscast, and today I want to shed some light on what I'm calling Disney's cash conundrum and the impending Hulu headache. But to begin with, despite Disney's latest earnings call, Q3 2023, painting a more robust picture than many had expected, which is mainly thanks to the Disney Parks division once again posting record profits and propping up much of the rest of the company, as it accounts for 2/3 of the operating income, whereas Disney's media division has yet again seen a year-over-year decline. There is no doubt that Disney is definitely sailing through some very troubled waters, or as the CEO Bob Iger put it, strong headwinds, with extremely disappointing box office results that are made all the worse by their inflated budgets, the pent-up post-pandemic demand for Disney vacations beginning to soften, and on top of all of that, there is the problem of continued stagnation of Disney Plus subscriber growth. But what's brought about all this talk online about Disney potentially going broke as a result of all of this, from what I can tell, is the sudden realization that Disney, on top of all of that, has to purchase the remaining 1/3 of Hulu that is currently held by Comcast, the parent company of NBC Universal. As you see, back in 2019, after Disney acquired a controlling 2/3 of Hulu through the 21st Century Fox acquisition, Disney and Comcast entered into what is called a put call agreement, where at the end of a designated 5-year period that ends in 2024, both companies mutually agreed that Disney would buy the remaining 33% stake if Comcast chose to sell. But crucially, as part of this agreement, there was a floor valuation given to Hulu, which was set at $27.5 billion, which means that Comcast's 33% stake at the time of that agreement was valued at $9.2 billion. But there is a big caveat to all of this that has been underreported, and that is that Disney also agreed that Comcast's ownership interest in Hulu will never be less than 21% or $5.8 billion. However, you're probably wondering at this point, how could Comcast's 1/3 stake in Hulu be worth anything less than 33% of $27.5 billion? And well, it all comes down to how much Comcast funded, or more importantly did not fund, Hulu over those 5 years, as Hollywood insiders all agree that at some point Comcast stopped making meaningful contributions to the service, and the degree to which they stopped investing is what will make a big difference to the end price. And so towards the end of this year and into next year, when all of this comes to a head, Disney and Comcast are not likely to settle on an end price, as Comcast is overvaluing and Disney is wanting to undervalue. And in the likely event that that happens, then it's going to be sent to independent arbitration, who will then determine the fair market price that Disney must pay Comcast for that 33% stake, which many analysts agree will be $10 billion or just under. But nevertheless, $10 billion is a huge amount of money that Disney's going to need to cough up to take full ownership of Hulu, and so would it actually bankrupt them to make the acquisition as they currently stand? And well, the answer to that is no, but only just, as it was reported in the most recent Q3 2023 earnings report that Disney has $11.4 billion in cash and cash equivalents, which are short-term, highly liquid investments that Disney has access to at any time. So theoretically, Disney could purchase Hulu as they currently stand, but importantly it would mean almost fully depleting their available cash, which wouldn't make the best business sense. And yes, I know that Disney has operated with much less in terms of cash in the past, usually operating with around $4 billion prior to 2019, but it's important to note that Disney's cash reserve got a huge artificial injection at the start of the pandemic, when they raised $17 billion in 2020 by selling off and restructuring their debt with multiple debt tranches maturing up until 2060. Which brings us to the flip side of a proverbial coin, as we obviously have to talk about Disney's massive debt burden, which currently stands at around $48.5 billion in debt, which is more than double what it was before the Fox acquisition at the end of 2018. And although Disney has made strides to paying down that debt, the fact is it has remained stubbornly high since the acquisition of 21st Century Fox in March of 2019, which added a massive $36 billion to Disney's debt load. And yet somehow, throughout all of this, Disney has kept the confidence of Wall Street, which is all thanks to their relatively low debt-to-equity ratio of 0.49%. Which means that Disney's actually more economically balanced than the likes of Netflix with 0.6%, Warner Brothers with 1.01%, or Comcast with their 1.12 debt-to-equity ratio. And this is very important, as it means that Disney has additional headroom for more borrowing with a line of revolving credit that extends to $10.5 billion. But actually using that $10.5 billion of credit is a whole different issue, as that would also potentially mean losing the favour they have with Wall Street, which could be an even more dangerous play right now, considering the vulnerability of the entertainment business as a whole, from the writers and actors strike, the shaky streaming market, and the wobbly recovery of the theatrical movie business. Therefore, just to do a quick mid-video recap here, Disney can't deplete their available cash reserves because that would mean more borrowing, and they can't borrow more because that would mean annoying Wall Street, which leaves them with one option left, and that is to sell to then offset that $10 billion they need for Hulu. And that's exactly what they're going to do. As in an interview with CNBC at the Sun Valley Media Conference, Iger stated that Disney was going to be expansive when it came to this matter, and even went as far as to admit that the traditional linear TV model may not be core to Disney's business in the future. And this is very important, as the Sun Valley Conference is famous as a place for merger and acquisition talk amongst its highly exclusive guest list comprising of the titans of the media business. And so likely Iger was using this CNBC interview to intentionally plant a massive for sale sign into the proverbial front lawn of the Mouse House at a very strategic time, as Iger admitted that the main goal of his contract extension to 2026 was, in his words, because there's more transformative work to be done to ensure the company has a better cost structure. And so in many ways it's only fitting that the guy who spent so long building Disney's media empire is also going to have to be the guy who ends up dismantling it. But at this point, you know what? Let's do it for him. Let's go through the list of TV assets that they could put on the auction block to realistically raise a huge amount of money, with the first one being the biggest, and that is the ABC nationwide TV channel. Now this is supposedly worth around $7.9 billion, which is a huge chunk of change and would easily go a long way to plugging the gap needed to acquire the 1/3 of Hulu Disney will have to buy. But in all honesty, despite that being serious money, I think there's two reasons why Disney would want to keep ABC. With the first one being that it's just too much of a valuable asset to Disney, as even though TV is a dying medium, it will be the over-the-air broadcast channels that are available to everyone in America that will survive the longest. And that alone presents a huge marketing opportunity that Disney will just not want to give up. As if anything has been true of the Iger era at Disney, it's been all about the synergistic crossover opportunities between the various assets. And ABC has been a great powerhouse behind a lot of this synergistic crossover. As for an example, ABC's Good Morning America provides Disney the opportunity to promote any of their upcoming projects, be it theatrical, streaming or theme parks, on a national stage every morning. Then the second reason is sentimentality, as despite Iger always stating that he has spent nearly 50 years at Disney, realistically speaking, he spent the first 21 years of that time at Capital Cities ABC before it was purchased by Disney in 1995. And so I could see Iger having a very strong sentimental attachment to keeping ABC as part of the Disney family for now. But whether Disney keeps hold of the main ABC channel or not, the same can't be said for the regional TV stations all across the country, as they're likely to be sold off. As analysts predict, the estimated price tag for all of the remaining ABC regional TV stations under Disney's ownership is within the range of around $4.1 billion. Although of course, there's no point talking about how much Disney could make from a sale without also talking about who could potentially be the buyer. And it seems most likely that there are only two realistic candidates that will be interested in purchasing the regional TV stations, and that is Nexstar and the Sinclair Broadcast Group. As it was in August of 2019 that Disney sold off the regional sports channels within the Fox Sports Network to Sinclair for $10 billion, which has since been rebranded to Bally Sports. And so if Disney and Sinclair have done business in the recent past, there is likely a precedent set for a potential deal to be struck for the ABC regional TV stations as well. However, that's not all up on the auction block, as Disney also has several cable TV assets that could easily be classed as non-core to Disney's overall business that could generate a substantial profit. Beginning with something that many people are not even aware is partially owned by Disney, and that is the A&E networks, which includes the A&E, Lifetime and History channels. As you see, Disney acquired this ownership stake through the 1995 Capital Cities ABC acquisition, but Disney only owns a 50% share of A&E networks, with the other 50% being owned by the Hearst Corporation, who are predominantly based within the print media and regional newspaper and lifestyle magazine market. And so Disney would have to find a buyer who would be okay with only getting 50% ownership share for an estimated $6.8 billion from what the analysts have predicted. Then the next cable TV asset that Disney could be looking to sell is FX, as apparently the sale of this could generate around $4.5 billion. And then lastly, in terms of cable TV, Disney also owns FreeForm, formerly known as ABC Family, and that apparently has an estimated price tag of around $1.5 billion. But there is a problem that I can foresee with Disney selling off FX and Freeform, and that is currently they contribute quite a lot of content to the Hulu service, which might mean that Disney will want to keep either FX or Freeform within the Disney fold for a little longer. But putting that to one side, if Disney did end up selling off A&E, FX and Freeform plus the ABC regional TV stations, then it could generate approximately around $17 billion for the Walt Disney Company, along with a very attractive proposition of reducing their overall debt load, as any deal would also include a substantial portion of the debt from those assets. Now, you've probably noticed that throughout all of this, all of the assets that are core to powering Disney Plus have been left out of the discussion, as obviously Disney will not be looking to sell Pixar, Marvel or Star Wars. However, when it comes to National Geographic and HotStar, their future is less certain, as there are some that say that if Disney is looking to majorly streamline the business, then they should also sell Nat Geo and HotStar, as after all, Nat Geo is expected to be worth around $3.5 billion, and HotStar in India has been priced at just shy of $1 billion. But personally, I feel that it would probably be better for Disney to keep Nat Geo, as it's a great studio brand that can anchor all of the non-fiction Disney Plus content, like special documentary series. And then selling HotStar would also mean that Disney would lose a major strategic foothold in a BRICS country that has huge potential to drive massive revenue in the long-term future. Although the downside of keeping HotStar is that it continues to be a drag on the Disney Plus subscriber to profitability ratio, generating negative headlines, as those purchasing Disney Plus in India pay a tiny fraction of what they pay in North America and Europe, and therefore are seen as an equal subscriber in stats, but not in value. But in stark contrast to linear TV not being core to Disney's business, we also have to talk about the red-headed stepchild of the Walt Disney Company, and that is ESPN. As despite ballooning sports media rights and dwindling cable subscriber numbers, Disney still sees huge value in staying in the sports business. But importantly, they want a strategic partner to help with content or delivery, or to de-risk the business as it transitions to a direct-to-consumer streaming model. And it's easy to see why Disney would want a strategic partner, as the way it breaks down is that ESPN is owned on an 80-20 split, with Disney owning 80% and 20% being owned by the Hearst Corporation. And so with Wall Street valuing ESPN between $30 to $40 billion in its current state, it means that even at the lower end of $30 billion valuation, a strategic partner purchasing half of Disney's 80% share would generate $12 billion. But the question here is who could be that strategic partner, which is where former Disney executives Kevin Mayer and Tom Staggs come into all of this, as Iger has contracted them to consult on the future direct-to-consumer transition for ESPN and to help find that strategic partner. And although many media companies have been mentioned by pundits, apparently Disney's first preference is the sports leagues themselves, as Disney has held initial talks with the NFL, NBA and MLB, about a potential ownership stake in ESPN, with the thinking being that the leagues would then have a vested interest to ensure that their content has a clear distribution model that would maintain profitability. And Disney has already started divesting their interest in ESPN, as they have announced a strategic partnership with Penn Entertainment to launch an ESPN branded sportsbook for gambling and betting. Now, as we come towards the end of the video, you've probably wondered throughout, if Disney only needs $10 billion to purchase Hulu, then why is it that Disney will be looking to so aggressively streamline the rest of the business and sell so much more off and make so much more money? And well, there are two answers to that question, depending on who you ask. As some believe that Disney is just doing all of this to make them more robust to weather a longer term streaming war in an ever changing media landscape, which does seem like the most likely reason. But then the other school of thought that's increasingly gaining traction is that Iger could be doing all of this to make Disney as attractive as possible for a potential sale of the company to Apple. But that alone is going to be a massive topic, so big that it will need its own video at some point in the future. But now, it's over to you, the Waltineers, as I would like to know, if you were the CEO of the Walt Disney Company, then what would you prioritise right now to future-proof the company for many generations in the future? And of course, if you've enjoyed this video for today, then subscribe down below, hit that notification bell, check out the rest of the videos on the channel, and I also want to say a massive thank you to the official Waltineer Club over on Patreon for supporting this channel. And with all of that being said for today, I've been Jack, you've been you, and I'll see you real soon.